Hello and welcome to
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why. Hi, it's Dawn here, and I'm joined as always by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett. And our very special guest tonight is Sam Holman.
Woohoo!
Welcome to our podcast, Sam. It is super nice to meet you. Tell us, how was your week? What's the latest? What's going on in your world?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. We scheduled this, I don't know, a couple months ago, I think. So
Probably.
been looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just kind of relaxing. Like I was telling Matt pre-show, I'm on summer break from college, and so I'm just kind of relaxing, doing some research into scheme stuff for the Packers, and yeah, just kind of digging into that.
Very cool. Yeah, it's good to have that time off of classes, of course, to like do what you actually want to do with your time. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And over here in Cincinnati, I just realized today that, we record on Thursdays, that tomorrow is the first day of July. I couldn't believe the summer is going by so fast, but it really is very fast paced for the work that I do in the summer, since it is the busiest part of the year for us with orientation. But still, like,
right.
What? It's almost July. Goodness. Dawn, how are you doing?
I've had better weeks. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, for real.
I'm going to be honest. Still struggling with little Kitty is still struggling, and that makes me struggle.
Yeah,
it's been rough. So she's gone through some higher level diagnostics this week. She had a rough day yesterday dealing with all of that. I had a rough day dealing with having her deal with that. It's just been a lot. Who'd have thought? Yeah. So I'm not going to go into it because it's just upsetting, but hopefully, we have ruled some things out, and we have a possible answer to what is happening with her internal bleeding, which is very serious. So she's still herself, and she does seem to be losing weight though continually. So but she's so cute and fun, and she doesn't seem to be super suffering, but we might have an answer, a possible answer. But we need more diagnostics, of course, for that. So I'm just working my way through all that. Nothing's happening fast enough as far as I'm concerned, but So, hey, Sam, we're just always so glad to have a guest who's like such a Packer aficionado. You're such an expert. Your writing is so great. And so we love to talk to you ourselves because we're selfish like that, but we also like to share you with our audience. So for everyone who's listening, this is Sam Holman, and he's at Sam_D Holman on Twitter. He is a film junkie, a defensive line enthusiast. This year must be really exciting for you then.
It is.
Yeah, Packers fan, student at EWU. We're going to go into what that is, where that is. Connoisseur of eccentric metal bands, and a writer and contributor for Wisconsin Sports Heroics and Peckernet. YouTube, you have your own YouTube channel. It's Sam Holman, Wisconsin Sports Heroics. So you have a lot going on for a college kid, and we're just super fans of you. So, but before we talk football, tell us, do you have a favorite film genre or a director that you like to follow?
I think that maybe the film junkie thing was actually talking about football film, like 22. I just now realized that I was really unclear when I was writing that in my profile.
So your favorite genre is football cut-ups.
Yeah, exactly.
All 22.
By Matt LaFleur is your favorite director.
Yeah, exactly.
That works. Okay, well, so tell us about your eccentric metal bands then.
Yeah, so I don't know. I get into I like a lot of like popular metal bands, like old school Metallica, all that sort of thing. But I also tend to get into kind of just random corners of metal genres and just listening to like there's this metal band from like Scotland or whatever that I've been getting into recently, and just kind of listening to their music, and just especially metal from other countries. I really enjoy hearing like different like styles, how they differ from American heavy metal bands, that kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah. So a thing I always wonder about is, you mentioned that you're a film junkie, talking about the work you do with the exceptional work you do with talking about like plays and especially defense and stuff. What's the process like for you when you decide that there's something you want to like look into and write about? Like, what does that look like for you on your end?
Yeah, it kind of depends on kind of where the starting point is, because generally, like in season, what I usually take topics from is I usually go through and rewatch each week's game and kind of pick out a play or two or a type of play that I'm interested in, and then I just do research. A lot of it depends on the resources I have. So like if I have a defensive playbook floating around that I can look at, kind of look at diagrams. There's a lot of great resources out there for defensive and offensive, scheme and that sort of thing. So if I can find out a little bit about the history of the play, I try to do that. In the off season, it's a little more unstructured because I don't have like that, that set source material each week that's coming out each week that I can go to. And so a lot of it depends on, what news there is, if I'm rewatching a game, what I find interesting. So it depends, but generally I'll kind of rewatch the play. I'll try to get kind of a sense of like what the whole structure of it, what all the players are doing. And then I try to look for additional background information on that, whether that's diagrams, history of the defensive or offensive system, all that sort of thing, and just kind of write about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the content that you make, I mean, we've talked about you a lot in this show, as you probably know. So, yeah, just keep up the good work on that for sure. Yeah, Dawn, what's our next question for Sam then?
Oh, yeah. So your content is just amazing. And it's kind of almost like the Sam Holman fan podcast. Sometimes. Yeah. But yeah. So Sam, we love to hear about, and I just realized my mic wasn't done. So anyone listening, sorry for the sound. Hopefully it's a little better right now. Sam, we love hearing about origin stories here on Hey, We Like Your Pod. So I want to ask you something, but I first want to ask you something else. But we want to ask you how you came to Packer fandom, because you're a student at EWU. Mm-hmm. So tell us what that is, and then tell us about your origin story with the Packers, because it doesn't sound like you're from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I am not. I have barely any connection to Wisconsin, actually. So EWU is Eastern Washington University. That's Washington State. So it's a college in a town out here. I live in Spokane, and it's in a nearby city called Cheney. It's about 40 minutes away or so. And so it's kind of the closest state college, cheap college that I could go to. I've been a student there. I was going to community college, and then I transferred there for my last 2 years. So that I'm entering my senior year now. This should be my last year of college if everything goes to plan. But kind of my backstory as a Packers fan. So my family is pretty much all from the Pacific Northwest. My dad was from Central Oregon. My mom was from Vancouver, BC in Canada. Growing up, my dad didn't really have like a NFL team kind of in the area that he was in. I can't remember my NFL history when the Seahawks were formed, when they were added to the NFL. But I don't think that was like a significant influence on him when he was growing up. So he wasn't really a Seahawks fan, which is kind of the closest team. So I think he bounced around a little bit. And then during like the 90s, middle of the 90s, he kind of became a Packers fan. He loved watching Brett Favre, Reggie White, all those guys. He's always been kind of a defensive guy. And so, Reggie White and Leroy Butler and all those guys, he just loved them. I think that at different points before that, he was a fan of the Bears during the 85 era. He was a fan of the Giants, I think, right when they had Lawrence Taylor and all that good stuff. So he kind of became a Packers fan during like 96, 95, around there. I think it was around the same time that he met my mom. They got married. I was born in 98. And then we actually 2 years later, when I was like, well, I don't know if it's exactly 2 years later, but when I was about 2, we moved down to Louisville, Kentucky, so he could pursue his master's degree down there. And so the only time I've been in Wisconsin was the one Packers game I went to in 2019.
And that's your profile picture.
Yeah, but I kind of inherited Packers fandom from my dad. For a while I wasn't super like into it, but kind of we moved over to Spokane to be closer to family. And that was when I kind of started to get into it a little bit more, become more interested in, the Packers and football in general.
Of course, you mentioned that your dad was really into the defensive side of things. So do you feel like that was like a natural thing that you inherited from him, or what? How did you kind of, is there a connection there, I guess is what I'm trying to say?
I would say there is. I mean, I think that I kind of was influenced, right? He would look up highlights of like Ray Lewis's biggest hits on YouTube, not biggest hits as in music, but biggest hits like on the football field.
I'm confused, obviously.
Yeah. And so I think, that influenced me a bit. I kind of just grew to like that stuff a lot, just get into that stuff. Just the nature of defense. And so that kind of flowed naturally into wanting to learn more about the scheme.
And so in the work that you've done to learn more about it, are there any specific like resources, whether websites or books or authors that you'd recommend for people who want to get more into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of resources. I think this era that we're living in is kind of like the golden age of content, I like to call it, because there's just so much you can go on YouTube. There's dozens of podcasts. Like I don't even have time every day to listen to all the podcasts I want to listen to because there's just so many.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a couple that I use a lot. The Athletic Football Show is just great for not just defense, but just general. You want to learn more about football, the financial side, offense, defense. They have a bunch of great guests on there that talk scheme in a way that's really approachable for like just the casual listener. And so, even someone who's a little bit more into the schematic weeds like me, I take stuff from that as well. So it's kind of a really listener friendly podcast, I think. A little bit more on like the really in the weeds stuff. Coach Chris Vasseur, or CoachVass as he's called on most platforms. He's a defensive coach. He's coached high school football a couple times. I know he's done some stuff for like NFL teams, college teams, done some consulting. And so he's kind of gotten a pretty big following. He's an amazing resource for defense. I mean, he's like gets like really, really into it. There was a time where I would listen to his podcasts and I'd understand about half of what he was saying. I think I'm a little bit more like, I've gained enough knowledge that I understand a little bit more, but still his insight into the game, his experience in the game is really valuable. And so I really enjoyed listening to his stuff. And then there's a bunch of other guys on Twitter. Coach Cody Alexander, he has a website called Match Quarters. He's got a bunch of books about defense. I think he's got a book of the same name, Match Quarters, and then a bunch of other stuff just about structured defense. His focus is also, in teaching it because he's a high school coach, obviously. Just a bunch of guys on Twitter like that. Bobby Peters for like specific Packers offense. I think that was one of my first, like the first resources I got into was his guide to the Packers offense in 2020. So there's a lot more I could go over, but those are some of the main ones.
And the way you mentioned, like getting to the point where you're understanding more of what a person's talking about is one of the coolest things that I think about, like really diving into content. I mean, you mentioned the Athletic Football Show also, which has become one of my favorite podcasts because it's so well done. And, Robert Mays is just such a like affable host, and the rotating cast of like, co-hosts are excellent, especially Nate Tice. So like, Nate Tice is always like throwing out terms about different sorts of like, offensive scheme things. And sometimes like, Robert Mays stops and be like, hey, wait, so what is that for the which I really appreciate because it makes it more like approachable, listener friendly. And so between like Nate Tice talking about that stuff and then like the things that Dusty puts out there, like it's starting to stick in my brain. I'm starting to like get the things and like I can read it and like it makes more sense to me. I love that happens and that show is so good. So I'm going to check out some of those resources you mentioned. This sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to make sure to get some links for those, or spellings at least, so we can grab the links and put them in our show notes, because I was like, I should be taking notes, but that's why we have our show notes, so we don't have to do that. I think I'm following at least one high school football coach, but I don't think it's Coach Vass, but he's great too, but I can't remember who he is right now because I haven't been much on Twitter this summer at all.
It might be Joe Brunel. He's a Packers fan and a high school football coach.
Could be.
With him a bit.
Maybe Coach Han?
Yeah, that could be as well.
I think I'm more than one. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. I don't know. My brain is like mush today, so I don't know. But we can never have too much content. As you said, this is the age of content overwhelmed. Not overwhelmed, but just, wow, we have so many choices, and it's great.
Yeah.
It's so great. I love it. So back to your music, I meant to ask you that since we're talking about content. So is that how you kind of come across some of your like European metal bands and stuff? Is that on YouTube, or do you just through Spotify?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. Sometimes I'll be listening to Spotify like recommended songs and hear some on there. Sometimes it'll be in my YouTube recommended. So it comes from a lot of different places.
Yeah. All the artificial intelligence that knows to give us what we want.
Yeah, exactly.
Scares me so badly. It scares me. But yeah, yeah. That's cool. All right. So cool. So you do some really great work, some great writing, and you pop on to podcasts, and you've got your YouTube channel, and we really appreciate it. But what we like to ask is about, we like to ask about relationships. We're all about relationships and community. And so who are the people in your life? Your father obviously has had some influence on you with your Packer fandom and NFL knowledge. Your father, any other family and friends, who they are, it doesn't matter if you mention their names or not, but it's up to you. But how they help you and support you to do what you do with Wisconsin Sports Heroics and within the Packers online community.
Yeah, I mean, I think my dad is probably the main influence in my like kind of my physical relationships type thing, like where people I met in person for the most part. A lot of my support comes from online. There's some great people. I mean, you guys have been some of my earliest supporters, and so that was great, really encouraging, and really helped me to kind of continue with that kind of stuff. Dusty, I totally forgot to mention him earlier when I was talking about people whose work I really like. But yeah, he's amazing. He's super great guy. He was one of the guys, I think my first real content on Twitter was I did some breakdowns of defensive line prospects for the draft in 2021, I think. And he was like one of the first people I reached out to. I asked him, how do you create video clips that you can post on Twitter? And he was super helpful, gave me a bunch of tips for that. And so that kind of really, I think that really got me going. And kind of, if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't had him as a resource, I don't know if I would be making content, that kind of thing.
Wow.
He's a king. He's one of our favorites for sure.
Definitely. And then one thing I did want to mention about Wisconsin Sports Heroics, I really appreciate the people there. They kind of give me a lot of freedom to basically write whatever I want. And so I can, I don't have to just, post, 3 bold predictions for the Packers season or whatever, though I can do that. I have fun doing those types of articles as well. But if I want to dig into a certain type of play, they're just like, okay, go for it. So that's a really, really cool opportunity where I have a lot of freedom to kind of build my brand a little bit and dig into defense, and I really enjoy that type of stuff.
It's funny how when Dusty mentions you on podcasts and stuff, he's always like, and Sam seemed to emerge fully formed somehow. It's hilarious. It's like as though you were like grinding film in the background for like years emerged or something. But I guess you're just ready for it. Just jumped into it, got some help. That's no surprise. I didn't know that, but that's no surprise because, of course, Dusty's just like one of the most friendly, helpful guys in the community for sure.
Yeah,
he really is. We love Dusty, and I don't know. I hope I'm not stepping on anything, but yeah, your work together this last week, I'm just going to say, was really fun to listen to.
That was a ton of fun to do. I was looking forward to that podcast for a while when we set it up.
Yay. Well, okay. So our final question that we love to ask is about that online NFL Packer online Twitter. We call it Packers Twitter, but the online community, because it also includes YouTube, Facebook, Instagram.
Right.
We're all over the place. In fact, we're theoretically streaming live tonight in 3 places. I'll be interested to find out how they all turned out. Because I had a little bit of difficulty connecting to our Twitter. Hey, we like your pod. So we might be on Twitter, my personal Twitter tonight. So we're just going to find out later.
Yeah.
It'll be somewhere. But so one of our questions, okay, I just kind of went off on a tangent there, is about our online community. And we'd love to ask if there's one thing you love the most about our online community and one thing you would change if you could.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things I really love is just that sense of community, right? You know, where there's a lot of different people making a lot of different types of content, and just there's a lot of really cool stuff out there, but made by some really cool people. And I think that that's really cool that we've got such a wide range of people doing different things. And kind of, I think that the thing I would change would be kind of the dark side of that, where you get infighting or whatever, or cliques forming and that kind of thing. And then I always just like that kind of stuff. It just stresses me out, and I try to stay as far away from it as I can. Mm-hmm. But I think that overall, I think I've had a positive experience in the Packers online community, and yeah, that's something I really like.
Yeah, I hear that about the like when you see those clicks or infighting things, I tend to just try to be like, okay, next tweet, what's going on? Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely more good than there is anything else with our community. There's so much greatness in the community, and I think it's good that we're all learning to be really tolerant, because somebody might just have a bad day and say something nasty or whatever. I know I've said things online. I try not to say anything online because I know I'm going to regret it. But I've said things that it's like, I shouldn't have quite said it that way. Or I really did not need to say anything. Why did I have to do that? But yeah, so, I like that our online community, our Packers community is pretty supportive and forgiving, because not everybody's, no one's perfect. And everyone can have a bad day. Mm-hmm. So, well, we're really happy you're spending time with us tonight, Sam, and so that we can all get to know you a little bit better. And we feel our community is stronger than when we really make connections with each other. So, and not everybody can do a podcast or YouTube. But in any case, we're really glad we're doing it and you're here with us. So, Little Birdie told me you might have a superlative to offer for our audience tonight.
Yeah, I was gonna go. I wasn't sure exactly what to call it, but I just, one of the more insightful articles I read recently. DUNNE wrote a really great piece on Sammy Watkins, obviously the new Packers wide receiver they signed in the offseason. And just to kind of summarize it, it talks about how Watkins was, he got into a pretty dark place with the Bills. He's getting wasted every night, and as a result, injuries were happening. He was kind of just sinking into depression and all that sort of thing. And Ty really kind of breaks down, how we kind of got out of that rut. Just exploring different avenues of spirituality and all that sort of thing. He has some kind of esoteric beliefs, aliens and that kind of thing, but it helped him get to a place where he's happy. He's kind of been able to return to the NFL. He's obviously on the Packers, and he's kind of providing a unique influence in the locker room. But it was just a really interesting article. I've always really appreciated Ty's, like, I'm not sure what to call them, like profile pieces almost, where he kind of interviews in a specific player. I know he's done ones about Leroy Butler, MVS in the past, Jay Sternberger, and those were all really, really great pieces that I really enjoyed. And so this was kind of another addition to that type of article.
Yeah, Ty Dunne's an amazing writer for sure. I know that some of the stuff he does for Go Long is like free and open to the public. Some of it is behind the paywall. So is that one that's like is available to everybody, or?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I don't have an account right now, and I was able to access it. So I assume it's free.
So that means it'll be easier for our listeners to check it out, easier for me to check it out too. I actually saw that come across my email notifications because I do have the subscription to his deck. So I'm gonna go back and check that out for sure. That's exciting. I don't know a lot about Sammy Watkins, so it'd be good to get to know more about him from that for sure.
Yeah.
Very cool, Sam. All right, Dawn, you have like what 3 superlatives tonight? I have 2, so we could go back and forth.
Let's hear what you have, Maddie.
Oh, should I start? I was thinking since you have 3 and I have 2, if you start, then it's going to be, a nice, like sort of a situation.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let me scroll to this week's superlative. I was really excited about them. I've kind of lost my steam, so I was like, maybe I'll just do 2, but no. Okay, we're good. Okay, here's one. Actually, I'm gonna maybe switch up the order, kind of just based on what you just talked about with Sammy Watkins and Ty Dunn's article on him. So I'm going to talk. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Okay. No, I am not. I'm going to go with someone. Sorry. I'm going to go with the original one because I got 2 guys mixed up. Sorry. Okay, everyone. Matt just threw me I was waiting for Matt. I was just kicking back, drinking my little bevel. Just like, what? I have to talk now?
Okay. We're just hanging out playing with their cat.
I know. I'm like, I was in a zone listening. Okay. So this is going to be my first one is going to be all this preamble here. Fraternizing with the enemy part 2.
Right. More fraternizing with the enemy.
So my little news series, it's just a series in my head, honestly. I don't know why I have to verbalize everything, but it's fraternizing. So I'm talking about somebody who's not on the Packers, which I think I'm going to do at least this once per show. Sure. So superlative, most interesting grandfather.
Oh.
This goes to Darren Waller. Darren Charles Waller is a spectacular tight end that I love watching. Sorry, he's not on our team. There were some rumors he might have. I was like, yeah. I did comment on some of those posts. So yeah, of course, he plays for the Las Vegas. Raiders, if you don't know this already, he came from Georgia Tech. But check this out. He is the great grandson of Fats Waller.
What?
Yes. Fats Waller, jazz legend, composer and jazz pianist. Fats. I mean, gosh. Okay, so, but a little bit more to the vibe that you were chatting about Ty Dunn's piece. Waller also has overcome addiction, and he's known for being really supportive of other players facing these challenges, not just on his team. And I like this guy. I really like watching him there. You know how there's just certain players. It's like, there's another. It's usually the tight ends for me, I guess, for me. But he's just so. I like everything about him. And so Waller began using oxycodone at age 15.
Oh man.
Probably street, I don't know. And alcohol at 16 years old. And his oxycodone addiction escalated to the point that he was eventually spending $100 per day on pills. I don't know what that means because back then that was probably a lot. It probably would be more today. But later in life, then he added in cocaine. And then on August 11th, 2017 in Maryland, he overdosed on pills while sitting in his parked Jeep. Thankfully, it was parked, but he did overdose and then spent 34 days in a substance abuse rehab program in Maine, and after which he took a job stocking shelves at a Sprouts farmer's market. Put his life back together. Obviously, he's playing, and he's a star, and everybody wants him on their team. I do believe he did just eventually get his contract done for the Raiders. I can't remember, But since then, he founded the Darren Waller Foundation in 2020, so just a couple of years ago, to equip youth to avoid and overcome addiction to drugs and alcohol, and to support youth and their families during recovery and during their treatment journey. So incredible comeback story, and a joy to watch. On the field is Darren Waller, and that is my Fraternizing with the Enemy.
Definitely a top 5 tight end in the league at this point. He's an amazing player. Really good example, Don, of like a player that's fun to watch who's not on the Packers. So it makes me wonder, Sam, do you have any players out there that you think of like that, like a non-Packer who you just love to watch?
I mean, a little bit kind of obscure, but there's a defensive tackle, Sebastian Joseph Day. He played with the Rams for a while. He just signed with the Chargers. He's just a super strong defensive tackle. He's a nose tackle, and he really kind of put together, some amazing play in the Rams defense. I just loved watching him when I was able to see him on film.
Nice. I have to kind of tune into anything I hear about him, because I know the name, but I have no idea anything about him beyond what you said today. So yeah, I'll check it out for sure. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Don, should I do my first one?
Yeah, let's hear it, Maddie. Now maybe I can relax for a second.
So this one's gonna be most intriguing. So Bill Huber and Matt Schneidman did an episode of Head of the Pack this week to kind of talk over some of the post OTA, sort of like, big storylines. And I think they did, as always, a really great job of kind of hitting the high points, summing up some stuff. And, their banter, their rapport is so good. They both kind of have slightly different perspectives. Because you got like Matt Schneidman kind of like laying down the facts, and then Bill Huber will be like, my goodness, something, crank old man for a minute there. And then Matt will be like, listen, and say some stuff kind of counter, and like their back and forth is hilarious. But the thing that like kind of struck me during this episode, and I need to go back and like get the actual like clip of it and post it. As a really like offhand thing, it'd be easy to miss it, is that they were talking about something, I think it was with Jair last season. I'm pretty sure it was with Jair. And midstream, Matt's like, and of course, there's this one thing, Jair, that, we weren't allowed to report on it. And they just kept going like that was not a big deal that he said that. Like, wait a minute. Are there things that the reporters know that they can't report on? Because what's the story with that? Like, why is that a thing?
Well,
so I don't know if either you have any information on that sort of thing. I was like, wait, hold on. So I'm very intrigued by that. I kind of want to follow up with Matt Schneidman, through DMs, because we've actually had some conversations back and forth.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about here, man? Have you guys heard of that before?
I've heard of similar stuff. I think that, obviously when you think about practice, there's stuff that, reporters maybe see that scheme related, that kind of thing, that they can't report on. Just depends on, what the situation is. And yeah, I think there are there's stuff that the teams, want to put out there, and then that they don't want to put out there. And I think that, a lot of the times, when you hear Rappaport or you see Rappaport, Schefter, them kind of giving information, a lot of that stuff that the team wants out there, and then they're holding some stuff back. I'm not an insider or anything, so I don't have any special insight in that, but just kind of, based on, what I've heard about how the NFL kind of operates, it doesn't, surprise me too much that there's that kind of stuff where, reporters know stuff that they aren't allowed to report.
Interesting. Any thoughts on that, Don?
Well, yeah, I can't think of any other examples, but I know that they have to hold certain things back for the team, but also the NFL in general has some guidelines on certain personal information, or what they would think is potentially could affect the competitiveness of the team and the whole, as it would affect the whole league.
Yeah.
Right. That's when it would matter to the league. And as for the team itself, I could imagine there are situations where, either the coach or Brian, the GM of any given team would have said to the reporters, hey, we're trying to keep that private for now, and we'll let you'll be the first one to know, when it can be, you'll have the first chance to release that, when if you don't mind. More of a gentleman's agreement. And the thing is, think about it this way. If you're a reporter and that's your job, right, is to have relationships with the team, and you're irritating anyone important on that team, you're not going to get your questions answered. You're not going to get treated with, you're not going to get access to things. So you kind of, follow that to the logical end.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think you
That's why I'm here, because I'm so
Smarties. Awesome. So yeah, most intriguing. I'll go back and find that clip later and I post it on Twitter because it really caught me. But yeah. So Dawn, what's your next one?
Also kind of in line with my kind of summer vacation non-football theme is most dangerous sport that's not the NFL. And also true crimey stuff. Came across a podcast called Final Days on Earth. The life and death of Dammion Hurd. Dammion Hurd was a freshman wrestler at Western Colorado University who went missing very sadly after an off-campus party in 2014. His body was found 4 days later in a remote location. And after a 6-month investigation, the police ruled Dammion's death a suicide. But the facts of the case don't really support that. It's very fishy, including that things were taken, a robbery. So, but Dammion had been in fights, and he obviously was a wrestler. He had been in fights, during parties and that kind of thing. He was a freshman, so a little bit, cocky maybe. And including this night, he was in at least one fight, if not more, that people witnessed. And what came to light, a couple things came to light in this podcast, and why I'm sharing it here, because you'll see. One of them was that they were using oxygen deprivation masks to help them in their training, their wrestling training. Well, they were also using them evidently at the party and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that scares me to death, but that might have played into whether he really took his life or was deprived of oxygen and then it made to look like he took his life.
Yeah.
So, but also that wrestlers know how to put each other to sleep. They call it putting them to sleep. They were talking about it pretty casually. It's like, so there's that. But so basically it's a 12 episode podcast. It reconstructs the final days of his life, and it takes listeners through the very complicated and inept, I will say, investigation. But throughout this, listening to this, I kept thinking, nobody's talking about potential concussion or head injuries that he may have had that may have led to suicide or erratic behavior, And sure enough, she got through the whole podcast, and then she had like this bonus episode, and it was all about CTE. She had a CTA specialist, and she's like, I really didn't think about this. And I was like, I was thinking about it. I was yelling at the YouTuber or at the whatever I was listening on. And so this expert came on. If you're interested in this, you can hear it on the podcast. It was I think it's the 11th episode, Alternate Theories. If you want to hear about this, because he kind of does compare the statistics between wrestling and football and other dangerous sports where CTE is problematic. So anywho, but the big takeaway for me was to learn that CTE, concussion, and suicide is more prevalent in wrestling than in football. And I'm just going to add that to the list of things that if I ever had a kid, which I won't, obviously, at this point, they would not be able to participate in, which is why I'm not a parent. But yeah, were you aware, you guys, of how dangerous wrestling was?
No,
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, it was just kind of an eye opener. That's not why I listened, but it was just, I kind of like to learn things as I entertain myself. I like to pick up things, but yeah, there's a lot of science obviously in this particular podcast as well. So yeah, and to lighten things up, my most goofy, or maybe most goosey. Yeah, we have to lighten that up a little, because that's a very upsetting story. And it's still, hopefully they'll reopen that investigation. And speaking of British Columbia, one of my favorite places to go, and I do love, by the way, I love Washington as well. Just love it up there. BC. There's a TikTok. So this is most goofy, probably best TikTok of the week. You might have heard of it. Franky the Goose, British Columbia, Canada. Of course, they lost 3 chickens in the last week from eagles, and caught Franky the Goose. They basically had security cameras on that caught this whole thing. Get taken by an eagle, and mom was mid breastfeeding her baby, probably like in the kitchen window or something, in nothing but her undies. And she sees this eagle come and try to take Franky the goose, who she evidently is very fond of, comes screaming out the door and saves Franky.
What?
So it was a happy ending. She's got like millions of rounds. I think she was on like the Today Show. It was so just a fun summer story to remind us that women are incredible. They can do so many things at once. That multitasking ability.
No reminder needed for sure. I hadn't heard about that yet, Don. That's amazing. I mean, obviously she was very occupied, and then to jump up and save her favorite goose is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I didn't see the Today Show or anything, but she was basically talking. Evidently, she was talking about how she was like, she's got this kid latched down, so she couldn't put the kid down, like just and she wasn't dressed, and she was like, she just ran up there, and it was just, everyone loved it. Everyone's happy. We like that.
Yeah.
We love it.
Cool. Well, so I have one more superlative than Dawn. All right.
Yeah, that's okay. Any final thoughts, you guys?
Oh, yeah. I have one more superlative, Dawn. I had a second.
I thought you said you have no more.
No. I have one more. I have one more. So this one is going to be most amazing. So appropriate that Sam's on here for this week, because it is the podcast that had been mentioned with you and Dusty together. Chocolate and peanut butter,
Yeah.
So it was amazing, man. If people haven't checked it out, it was Sam's podcast with Packernet, with Wisconsin Sports Heroics, that partnership there, and it was like an hour and 45 minutes. So when I saw like the thing that it was going to be a thing on, like I saw a tweet about it, it came up on like my podcast feed. So I get like a notification on my home screen that this is a thing. I was like, oh, talking about Dusty, let's check this out. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. I'm like, sign me up. Let's do this. Cause like a podcast that one, normally it's like, okay, that's going to get shelved. We'll get to that at some point. So I dove right into it. Sam, it was amazing. Just like the depth that you and Dusty went into, like on so many like interesting facets of the team and where they're going, the possibilities. I want more of that. I know that you and Dusty were saying like, oh, we got to do this again. Like, I just want to be one of the many voices urging you to, yes, please do this again regularly. It was great.
Yeah, like once a month, maybe, like a series.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to put a podcast together that's that long every month, but I'm definitely thinking about that. Maybe try to get something put together.
That would be great. And I don't even want to hear anyone say there's no content during the off season. I'm sick of it. There's plenty of content. You just proved it.
That's a crazy thing, right? Because it is definitely the dead period of the calendar, no doubt about it. But then this week, I know we said Dusty's name like 50 times. Here's 51. This week he put out so much stuff. Between that podcast, he had like 2 different articles, like a Twitter thread. He was on another podcast that he actually mentioned that on the Pack a Day that he was on this week. So I mean, there's people out there making content, So yeah, absolutely.
And there are things happening. I mean, the whole legal battles that are going on. I mean, the congressional subpoena to Dan Snyder. He's been subpoenaed now. The situation with the Browns quarterback, we'll just say. I'm not going to say all of it. So things do happen in the off season for sure. So. Okay, now, Maddie, any final thoughts? And again, Sam, to you, we just love having you here, and we're so honored that you. Actually, I should ask you first. Do you have any final thoughts?
Let's go first. Yes.
I mean, not really. I mean, this was a ton of fun. Yeah, I'm just always glad to talk Packers with people and get to meet people in the Packers content universe.
Agreed. So fun having you here, Sam. I mean, of course, we've interacted a good amount on Twitter, so to actually have the chance to talk to you is so cool. So thanks for giving us the time to do that.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Dawn, do you have any thoughts before I kind of wrap up the stuff here?
Well, I'm just really going to be tuned into Sam because I'm so excited about the defense this year for the Packers, and it better be good. We're all so psyched up about it. So but I'm glad to know that you're particularly interested in that side of the field or whatever.
Yeah, this offseason was pretty exciting as a fan of the defense.
I
studies it.
For sure, in the draft and everything. Yeah, very cool. Okay, Maddie.
Yeah, so I think another thing I want to put out there before we get to the end is that with a week like this, where there's all kinds of great content that kind of like just like fell into our laps, just a reminder to our listeners that, you know, there's gonna be some weeks where there isn't as much stuff, so you don't forget about these great weeks and like put some of those things to the side so you can like delve into them on another week. I mean, we're talking about this discussion that Sam and Dusty had on the podcast. It's going to be just as relevant a month from now as it was this week. So one of those great things that you can kind of like put on the shelf and come back to later, or even like re-listen later, pick up some stuff. Because I mean, with something like that, just keeping the example, I'm sure if I listened through that a second and third and fourth time, I'd be picking up more stuff each time. So, you know, savor the good things we have from the generous content providers out there, helping to make us better, smarter fans. Very much you included, Sam, obviously. So anyhow, friends, make sure you are following Sam Holman on Twitter at Sam_D Holman. That is HOLMAN. And of course, you'll find links in our show description for everyone we mentioned, so please check it out. Whether you're a super fan or a content creator, we'd love to have you a chance to interview you. We'd love to have a chance to interview you. So if you're a subscriber, our DMs are open at Hey WLYP, Hey Willip, and on all the social platforms. We'd love to hear from you or someone you'd like to nominate to be a guest on our podcast this year. I'm just tripping over the words here, guys. Sorry.
Welcome to the party.
When you subscribe to our podcast, you help us spread the love in our community. And by sharing our podcast with your friends and family, you help the community and those who need positive influences and a little football fun in their lives.
That's right, Maddie. And we love you. We're so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and to have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod. And we look forward to seeing you next week on
Hey, we like your pod.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.